It is 10:14, so we'll call the meeting to order. We'll begin with public comment on closed session. Any public comment on closed session? Call-ins or from the floor? Okay, seeing no public comment, we will adjourn to closed session at this point. Meeting in order. We'll start with the report out on closed session. This will be given by Keith Lemieux.
Sure, and I'm pleased to start off this meeting with a bit of good news for a change. I've got a few things to report. First off, with regard to the matter against Mr. Frank Bellino, I am happy to report that Mr. Bellino has agreed to cooperate with the GA, and he's going to pay his fees. He's entered into a settlement agreement to that effect, and we're in the process of dismissing the case and collecting payment. So we can mark that as a success. Speaking of successes, I'm also very pleased to report regarding the Mojave Pistachios and Searles matter that on Thursday the trial court agreed with motions filed by the GA and dismissed with prejudice any claims that they were making against the replenishment fee. The court made it very clear that he was not going to allow any claims against the replenishment fee to go forward at the trial court level. They were granted leave to amend their complaint, but only if they could allege something else besides a challenge to the replenishment fee. So what that means as a practical matter is the issue with the replenishment fee in that court is dead as to now. They do have the ability to file an appeal later at the end of the case, and at that point they'll be able to argue whatever they want to argue about the replenishment fee. But that ends it in that case for now. And
hey, Keith.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's John Vallejo. Just a reminder: every time you turn your head away from the mic, we lose your audio. So
sorry about that. That's a good reminder. How do I sound now?
A lot better.
Okay, so let me start over. On Thursday, the trial court judge dismissed the claims filed by Mojave Pistachio and Searles Valley Minerals challenging the replenishment fee. They were granted leave to amend their complaint, meaning they can file new complaints, but the new challenge can't be a challenge to the replenishment fee. So that matter is effectively over at the trial court level. They do have a right to appeal that, but that's an important step forward as far as we're concerned on the legal team towards resolving those cases. I have one last matter to report, and that is with regard to the item identified as conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, Inyo-Kern CSD. What that is regarding is that the Inyo-Kern CSD has stated an intention to not pay the extraction fee that is currently owed, and in fact they have not paid their extraction fee for June or July. For that reason, the board unanimously directed the law firm of Oliveris, Madruga, Lemieux, and O'Neill to file an action against the Inyo-Kern CSD to collect the money owed and to get an order ordering them to pay it going forward, similar to what we did with Mr. Bellino, and we will have that filed promptly. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Okay, now if everyone will please follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag Next, we will have roll call.
Chairman Heyman,
Present.
Vice Chair Rotora,
Here.
Director Itmeyer,
Here.
Director Scrivener, Director Vallejo,
Present.
Commander Benson.
Present.
Thomas Bukowskis will not be with us until November of this year.
Very good. Okay, next we'll move to item 5, public comment. This time is reserved for the public to address the board about matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. So at this time, do we have any? We'll start with the floor. We have somebody ready, so go ahead.
Member of the Policy Advisory Committee, representing domestic well owners. First, I'd like to publicly thank Stan Rotora for making these public meetings with the public present a thing happen, because I know he pushed quite a long while to get that done. One of the other is, I'd like to, one of the first things that the Policy Advisory Committee did years ago, and I can't even tell you because it's been a while back, is we spent several months putting together a communications plan. And it was approved by the board and promptly filed. And there it has languished. I don't think anybody's ever even seen it. I see a question mark on Stan's face right now. He's probably never heard of it. But it's there. Now I'd like to also point out to you, last month at the board meeting, public comment period there was a whole group of people got up and spoke. And it just, even from the casual outside observer, you would have noted that most of those that spoke did not have a clear clue or knowledge of what is going on, what has gone on, and where we are today and what we have to do and all of the above. So there's a communications problem there. Now, I hate standing up here before you and saying that without offering you a solution, because I spent a bunch of years in the Navy as a Chief Petty Officer, Commander. So, and I hated to go to my department head or the skipper with a problem and not give him the solution. I didn't like that, but I'm afraid I don't have a solution. I've worked with Domestic Well Owners Association here for quite a while, and that's something we struggle with all the time, is how do you get to the domestic well owners so they understand what's going on? It ain't easy. I'm telling you, it's not easy. Dollars gets their attention. Water District proved that here some years ago. A previous general manager sat in a committee meeting one day and said, the goal of the Water District is to serve cheap water, good quality cheap water, and encourage conservation. I immediately went, you can't do that. That doesn't work. You serve cheap water and you can forget conservation. It ain't going to happen. Well, they had a big rate increase a year or so later, and guess what? Conservation kicked in big time. And all the rest of that is history. So anyhow, that's all I got. But communications is the problem. And also, still have to get one other point. Articles appearing in local papers saying that we are not in critical overdraft, that don't help, obviously, because we certainly are. The level of water, the depth of water in my well has gone down over 50 feet in the last 40 years. Now, I've already had to deepen it, understand all that stuff. You know, so my thought, what I always want to tell those people that say we don't have a water problem here, why does the level in my well go down only? It never comes up, only goes down all the time, every year, about 1.5 feet a year, every year. So why is that? So we have a critical overdraft problem. No kidding. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Neal. First topic here is with the question, why are we here at this time in the morning in the middle of the week? Why does this board continue to ignore requests by the citizens it's supposed to serve, that they want to have this meeting at a time when more people can get here? Deaf ears, no action. I don't think I even recall even one halfway serious discussion about the issue. So here we are, 11 o'clock in the morning. You got all kinds of people in Toronto who have to work who are really, really concerned about this replenishment fee and the effect on their livelihoods and their lives. You know, they got to take off work to come down here to this meeting. You got your two out-of-towners, all they have to do is call in now. They can't complain and whine that, oh, I have to drive all the way out to Ridgecrest for the meeting. It's not a problem. Everybody I see here, except for the guys who are paid very well to be here, shouldn't have a problem being here at midnight if they have to be. They're all local. So I don't see the problem with changing the time. I'm requesting that an agenda item be put on this board's agenda for the next meeting that we actually discuss changing the time and with respect to serving the citizens and not the better interests of the members of this board. Second issue is transparency. I recently submitted a Public Records Act request for certain pieces of information, one of which was that they would provide me the finance records of all payments to GA retained law firms from January 1, 2020 to July 15, 2021. Doesn't sound like a big deal. Just want to know what you paid your lawyers. Well, Mr. Lemieux and his firm sent me this response. Please note the Category 2 containing finance records of all payments to GA returned law firms for the period January 1, 2020 to July 15, 2021 contain, and I'll catch this, in entirety, attorney-client privileged records, and then, of course, they quote some, law code, which they misinterpret like they have done with me on other things in the past. I sent a letter to every member of this board demanding that I get this information, that they actually practice some transparency, and what response did I get? Zero. So, apparently, you could pay your lawyers all you want to pay. And they're going to say, we can't tell the public what you paid us because, well, we're your attorney. So they're a privileged class, and that can't be reported. Well, let me just give you some rough figures that contain that somewhere in it, and, of course, is not reported in enough detail for anybody to pull out. But this is from your profit and loss statement. Legal fees for GSP implementation. $100,000. Legal fees for special counsel, whatever that's supposed to mean. And Lemieux's going to say, well, can I tell you what that means? We're an attorney. We're privileged. Well, that's $250,000. So all this money we're having to pay in fees, $350,000 of it for the year going to the lawyers. And probably more going to the lawyers buried in there somewhere in this very nonspecific profit and loss statement. So I'm still waiting on that bit of information, and I'm still waiting to see if anybody on this board cares enough about transparency to instruct their lawyer to provide it.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Shirley Kirkpatrick here again. And no offense to you, Mr. Lemieux and Mr. Johnson. Last time I was here, I spoke about the sustainability law and that went into effect. And I was hoping this valley would use wisdom in handling this law. Here we are again. I see no wisdom in the approximately $1,459,835 paid to Stinson Engineering. And I'll go elaborate on that further. Because I mentioned before the October 18 GSA meeting, Mr. Johnson had mentioned about looking at bringing imported water to exchange with LA Water and Power. This makes no sense because in one day, for example, July 30th, a year's supply of water for 60,520 people went to the ocean. That's one day. Thanks to the information of Christy Diner with the California Water for Food and People movement, there's linked sources, so you can always look into that. Downer points out that climate change did not empty trillions of gallons of water out to Oroville, leaving it historically low level. The water in this reservoir has been released to comply with policy protection for endangered fish. This is the first time Hyatt power plant has gone offline as a result of low lake levels. Well, what does that have to do with this? Well, Well, our reservoirs were designed to provide up to 5 to 6 years of water in case of drought. As the saying goes, lack of planning or poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on our part. LA has insatiable thirst for water and continues to grow while we are paying exorbitant GA fees. This is not sustainable. LA needs to go desalination. If they believe it's too expensive, then stop communist environmentalists from wasting water, sending it out to the ocean. Renegotiate the LA aqueduct. Many Los Angeles officials, including Mulholland, were accused of shady dealings way back when. This is not a new thing, so there's a historical thing about that. We don't have a water problem. We have a management problem. Back to Stinson. I don't think we are doing what is best for our area. They are a bronze sponsor to the Water Education Foundation. The Water Education Foundation is located in Sacramento, California, and is led by Executive Director Jennifer Bowles. In December 2016, Jennifer Bowles led an international journalism workshop on water issues for UNESCO. Anybody familiar with UNESCO? That is United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. This one in particular was held in Tehran. Okay, Julian Huxley was the first head of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. Wrote the following in regards to UNESCO's educational goals. Its educational program, it can stress the ultimate need for world political unity and familiarize all peoples with the implication of the transfer of full sovereignty from separate nations to world organizations. Did you hear that? With the implication of the transfer of full sovereignty from separate nations to world organizations. Interestingly, the Water Education Foundation, the same organization that seeks to destroy our sovereignty, mentions Indian Wells Valley Groundwater City Attorney Keith Lemel in a good light. So you were familiar with that, so apparently, because you're on their website, because you have your Thousand Oaks-based attorney representing 4 water districts in the Los Angeles County. And my question is, how can Lemel serve as both general counsel for the Groundwater Authority and the city attorney and previously LA interests? Isn't that a conflict of interest? I guess you can get back with me on that. I don't believe he can, no more than I can believe Stetson engineers are working for the benefit of our city. I believe the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority needs to be dismantled and we cease doing business with Stinson, no offense. Engineering before jobs in Toronto are lost and businesses are destroyed in our valley, not solving any water issues, bowing to the globalist agenda, making our community another Cuba. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor?
Judy Decker. I just have a question. When April called the roll, she called Mr. Scrivener's name, who is the supervisor for the 2nd District. Is he going to replace Phil Peters?
No, he is just filling in
Thank
on
you.
the temporary, yes. Okay, seeing no further comments from the floor, we'll bring it to the phones. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee Westerlusk. I have a question regarding there was a letter sent from DWR to the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority and other stakeholders in the valley regarding offering to be a mediator to settle all the water issues right now. Is that letter or any progress from that letter going to be discussed at a future GA meeting, like at September?
If you would like.
Hi, good morning, Renee. That relates to litigation. The letter was sent specifically, I think, in response to the adjudication filed by the district. I can tell you that we have talked to the DWR about that letter, and the GA has expressed and continues to express a willingness in resolving whatever can be resolved with all of the parties in the adjudication, and we're certainly open to discussing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller. Caller, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Next caller.
Caller, go ahead. We cannot hear you, so. Okay, do we have any further callers? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 6, consent agenda. Consists of item A, approved minutes of the board meeting July 14th, 2021. Item 6B, approved letter to Mission Bank. Item 6C, approved expenditures, consisting of items C1, $46,375.72 to Stetson Engineers, and item C2, $18,876.25 to Regional Government Services. Does any member of the public wish to comment or pull any of these agenda items?
John Kersey, Community Planning Liaison Officer. Just one item on the minutes. It needs to correct. It shows Commander Benson was present last month. I actually filled in, so just a small adjustment.
Noted. Any member of the board wish to pull any of these items?
You asked for the board?
Yes.
I would like to pull 6C.
6C 1 or 2 or all? Stan. Which which item are you wishing to pull? The entire
6C 1 and 2.
1 and 2? Okay. So we will any other board members wish to pull any other items? So we'll go ahead and move forward with items on the agenda A and B. Looking for a motion to approve.
I move we approve the 6A and B.
Is that as amended regarding the minutes? Member Retora, is that as amended regarding the minutes?
The change in the minutes that Commander Benson was present at the last meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? I will second it. And just to be clear, do we have communication with our other directors?
I'm here.
Okay. So make sure we're good.
Chairman Heyman,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rotora,
Aye.
Director Scrivener, Director Scrivener,
Aye.
Director Itmeyer,
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Okay, we'll move back to Stan for discussion.
Yes, item 6C. Over a year ago, the Water District requested that all expenditures be annotated relative to where the expense was going to be charged, and that worked very well for many, many months. I would request that we go back to annotating all of the expenses as to where they are going to be charged, to go back to our previous system. And with that, I will move that we approve 6C.
Okay, and you're referring to at the where the items are listed in parentheses, they would say replenishment fee versus where the monies were coming from?
There's like 4 or 5 funds,
right?
3 or 4 funds, and we've always had it goes to one or the other or whatever.
Right.
Member Retora, I've been told from the people online that you're not speaking into the microphone clearly, so you keep turning your head like I do. You keep turning your head to talk to the chairman, and they lose you.
Okay, you want me to start over?
I think it would be best. I don't know that they heard you.
Okay. Over a year ago, the Water District had requested that all expenditures be annotated as to what fund was charged for those particular expenditures. And I would like to see that procedure continued. For some reason, it wasn't done this month. And so that's all I'm asking is we go back to the system where we were annotating.
Vice Chair Rotora, at the last meeting, you brought up concerns with how they were listed in regard to Stetson being charged to multiple sources of funding. So it's fine doing it for all of the other ones, but Stetson, there are multiple sources, and it was listed as a replenishment fee. So you brought up concerns at the last meeting. So I can go back to doing that, but Stetson will not be listed with the funding source because it's assumed that it's all of them.
Yeah, I understand that we're still trying to get organized with regard to the finances, but hopefully when we actually get organized, that the annotations will actually make sense. And I don't mean to belabor this, but I don't want to let it get lost in the noise. We need to make sure that we understand when we get invoices where they're going to be charged.
Okay, so to be clear, you're going to go ahead and motion to approve it, but you're just making a mention of that you would like to see that in the future, but we're not making a decision on that at this moment.
Right.
So no action need to be taken other than he is going to
motion.
motion.
You want me to move we accept it again? I did it.
You have, and so I'll second it. And
Chairman Heyman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rotora?
Aye.
Director Scrivener?
Aye.
Director Itmeyer?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
okay, moving on to item number 7, Water Resources Manager's Report. This will be with Steve Johnson.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm on, and you can hear me okay? I'll also try to speak straight into this as much as I can. I tend to turn away, too. It's good to see everybody. It's afternoon now. We used to do this in the morning, but now we're in the afternoon already. Anyway, it's good to be here. It's good that we're doing things in person. I agree with it wholeheartedly. I applaud the efforts to do these meetings in person as much as we can. Most of our report are update reports. We've done this in the past. We'll try to keep it as short as we can because it tends to take some time to get through them all. I have my staff that's working on these on the line, I think. I haven't double-checked, but I think they're online. Joseph Montoya, he's going to report on the grant funding and recycle water projects. I think Jeff Helsley is online, too. He'll be there with Joseph. Oh, even closer. Okay. Okay, better now? Okay. So, yes, under the grant funding, Joseph Montoya will be providing most of the report. Jeff Helsley helping out with Joseph. For the recycle water project, same thing. Joseph Montoya and Jeff Helsley of my staff. We'll be reporting on the surface percolation study that's being done. Steve Reich should be on the line. He'll be reporting on that. The shallow well impact mitigation program. Heather's on the line, and she'll be reporting on that. And just an update for everybody. She's going to do it anyway, but it's good. It's good to report these things as much as we can. But we have taken that draft program through the Groundwater Authority staff, and it's been released to the TAC and the PAC, I believe, for comment. We've already received some good comments back, and I think Heather will at least give an overview of the comments received. Got good comments back on that, so it's moving forward. Steve Reich will again report on the Navy coastal work that's going on and where we're at on the funding on those projects. And then lastly, the CMP, the Configuration Management Plan for the DRI model. The model is the Navy and the authorities model. Gene will not be on the line. There's a very brief report. I'll just provide that at the end when we get going. When we get all done, too, just a heads up, Mr. Chairman, Joseph will finish up. I think he has one more slide that's not listed on the agenda regarding, and it's actually regarding Prop 68. Oh, excuse me, Prop 1 Round 3 funding. And we wanted to give a report to everybody just to let you know that we are aware of the opportunity And Joseph will walk through what the application requirements are and that they don't really apply to what we're doing right now, although they may be available in the future. But we'll do that at the end. So starting off with grant funding, Joseph, are you on?
Morning, Steve. Yeah, I'm here.
Speak right into the microphone.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone. Like Steve said, I'll be reporting on item 7A, the grant funding under Proposition 1 and Proposition 68. For Prop 1, I do have an update this month, sort of been an ongoing update for the last few months, but we submitted invoices 8A and 9A and were recommended by DWR to remove certain costs under the construction component of our grant agreement because those costs were subject to CEQA concurrence. We resubmitted those invoices back in May for reduced amounts. The update I have is that we received payment from both of those invoices in the amounts of $82,904.06 for invoice 8A and $51,679.74 for invoice 9A. We received payment for those on July 20th. We'll be working with DWR to coordinate how the rest of the invoice is going to be paid, whether they're going to ask us to submit another invoice for those removed costs or if they're just going to work with what we already submitted. So that's good news for those two invoices. I also have an update on the CEQA concurrence that DWR has asked us to prepare for the construction components of our grant. We were asked to submit an updated environmental information form and a letter certifying that there were no legal challenges to the Prop 1 grant project, along with any permits, access agreements, and environmental documentation related to those items. So all of that was submitted to the state on July 29th. DWR has acknowledged receipt of those items, and they're currently being reviewed at their level. Hopefully after that CEQA concurrence is complete, we will be receiving payment for those removed items, excuse me. So now moving on to invoice 10A, I don't have an update on this invoice. We submitted it back in May. We haven't heard anything about payment being remitted to the authority or haven't heard anything from DWR about any comments or requests for clarification on that invoice, but we will be looking out for it and we will be preparing the next invoice package, number 11, which is due at the end of this month. So that'll wrap up the update for Prop 1. Steve, do you want to have board and public comments right now or just proceed to item B?
I think it's best that we go through the items like we did last meeting.
Okay, great. So moving on to Prop 68. Again, I don't have an update for the invoice 10B. We're still waiting on either payment being remitted to the authority or hearing feedback from DWR. I do have an update on the Prop 68 portion of our grant agreement. If you'll recall, we were actually awarded $330,000 in total under Proposition 68, but only $300,000 was made readily available to the authority, contingent on future appropriations of Prop 1 funding. We received an email from DWR stating that this additional $30,000 has been appropriated and has been made available to the authority. We're working with the state on preparing an amendment to our funding agreement to make those funds available so we can ask for reimbursement for them. So that'll complete my update for the grant funding.
Thank you, Joseph. And yes, just to emphasize, this was actually really good news. If you folks remember, as Joseph pointed out, we applied for the maximum $330,000. We actually got that award, but the DWR was short of funding, and so they scaled proportionally cut everybody back, and we were cut back by $30,000. So we actually only received $300,000. We just received notice that they've got the funds available now, so they increased the allocation to the authority another $30,000. So we are getting the full. We are getting the full $330,000. So it's good news. Joseph, you can go ahead with or you and Jeff, whoever's going to report on it, the Recycle Water Program update.
Yes, I'm not sure if Jeff is on, but I'll proceed with the update. We released the joint scope of work for this recycled water alternatives analysis to the GA staff team several weeks ago. It's currently being reviewed by the staff team and will be released to the TAC after their review and any comments or revisions are made. And we've also released to the city, mainly Ron Strand and his engineering consultant, Mike Nunley, a write-up of the existing facilities at the wastewater treatment plant, the existing recycled water uses, and the city's plans to upgrade and expand the wastewater treatment facility. That has been released to the city and will go to the TAC immediately after their okay and their feedback on it. And we'll be continuing with our next steps, which include a characterization of the wastewater treatment plant effluent quantity and quality. We received from the city a new report prepared by Provost and Pritchard Consulting Group on the anticipated future flow rates and BOD loading at the wastewater treatment plant. So we will be reviewing that in our characterization process. And we'll continue looking at the regulatory permitting, environmental and legal requirements for all of the alternatives that we're looking at.
Thank you, Joseph. I guess that's it. Again, just a quick emphasis on the recycled water program update, and the emphasis is on the first bullet point, or second little bullet point, on the joint scope of work. Just to remind folks that we initially prepared a scope of work for this study that was run through the GA staff and through the TAC. We talked about it. And several things happened that ultimately put the agreement together between the city and the authority to work together to try to develop the project and come up with the best solutions for the best use, most economical, most effective use of recycled water. With that, the Water District indicated a desire to participate actively in the work. And after some discussion with staff, certainly from us, we welcome the input, we welcome the additional effort and the assistance to do that. So when it says joint scope of work, what that refers to is the Water District generously made their consultants, Krieger and Stewart, available. I think Don Zadiba, the general manager, Don Zadiba, participated too. But we did put together a sort of a technical group. Krieger and Stewart did provide a very detailed outline scope of work, much more detailed than we were working with before. So the whole goal of that work was to consolidate the two scopes of work into one that we would all agree with. It made sense, and that was done, and we finally accomplished that. There was a bit of a delay getting that joint scope of work back to the folks that participated. I apologize that because there was some confusion inside my office about what we should or shouldn't be doing, especially in relation to the adjudication action that the Water District filed, as who's working with who on all of this. So there was a delay. I didn't know it got delayed, but they do have it now, and that we're working through the different groups, including the TAC, working through that joint scope of work and to get going on that study. So things are moving forward there, and we, again, welcome the input and the assistance that the Water District brings and Krieger and Stewart. So I think that's it. Should we just go on to the next item, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. The next item is the surface percolation project, and I believe Steve Reich. You're on, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can. We can, yes.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to give you an update on the infiltration study. We have picked 3 sites with varying capacities for infiltration, ranging from about 1,000 to 10,000 acre-feet per year, where we've gone ahead and calculated the losses and requirements for which will be presented in the final report. I think everybody's pretty keen on understanding what the impact would be of a project like this. But, I want to give that update that we're continuing on that task 3. We have these 3 spots that we'll probably recommend as per the original scope of work for potential infiltration studies, as well as we have 2 backup spots that we're going to recommend. So we're putting that together, and we expect to have delivery of that to the GA staff in late August.
Thank you, Steve. Surprisingly, I don't have anything to add to what Steve just said. I usually do. The next item is the shallow well impacts mitigation program. Heather's been working on that. I've been in communication with Heather this morning. I believe Heather's on. Heather, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm here, Steve.
Okay, we can hear you.
Great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Since last month's update to the board, the draft written program was distributed to the TAC and PAC for review, as Steve mentioned earlier. We've received 4 comment responses back from members from the TAC and the PAC. They were all very good and valuable comments, and we are still going through all those to revise and edit the written program. The comments were, to summarize some of them, they were primarily about how to better address the emergency nature of a well failure in the interim before the board can go through the formal approval process to authorize a mitigation project. So this could potentially require emergency funding for something like water hauling to address the emergency nature of a well failure. There was additional comments about getting additional information from well owners, including well pump evaluation reports from a well service contractor after there's a well failure occurrence, and comments about clarifying and documenting the review process better, including about using a committee that's going to create the final priority list for mitigation projects. So right now we're currently going through all these comments, and we're going to be revising the program to incorporate these, and it will go back through staff review, and depending on how long the staff review will take, hopefully we can bring back a final program to the board next month.
Thank you, Heather. That's good. Good information. I also read the comments. I thought I thought the comments were really good comments. And just for everybody's general information about the comments received, as Heather pointed out, but I try to keep these more general and sort of at a level that we can kind of understand what we're looking at. We originally drafted the plan. I don't mean any of this in a critical or a negative way, but we originally drafted the plan. I would call it more in a passive approach, to where the authority sort of supplements what happens to a shallow well, to a domestic well, to a private well, to where they are there to maybe backstop or act as a parachute or something for a safety net for the well owner, to help them recoup cost or recoup what needs to be done, or make whatever mitigation efforts need to be done, not necessarily in an upfront or as an active solution. Many of the comments I thought were very good, because we actually hadn't really thought of it in that way. And it'll be a board decision on how the program works. You all know that there's funding being provided for it in the replenishment fee. But it'll be how the board decides a program could work, because a lot of the comments really talk about, as Heather pointed out, emergency situations. When domestic private wells go down, a lot of times they go down pretty fast, and these folks need water, and a lot of times they don't have the money to do the repairs or get the water that they need, or to pay for hauled water or whatever they need. So we're adding that into the program. It's a draft program. It has to be approved by the board, obviously. But we're adding those kinds of comments into the program, where there's a mechanism whereby, again, there's a requirement that a domestic well owner register the well with the authority. This has to be a part of the program. We have to have them inside the program. We have to know who they are, know where they are, and have them be a participant in the authority. But if they are registered in the program, then we're going to try to write in a program whereby, if they do have a real problem, the authority can potentially, again, it's in the program, can potentially react a little quicker, and maybe to rest their needs, at least on a short term, and then otherwise evaluate the long-term solution and try to solve the problem. So that's the biggest part of the change of the comments we received. Again, I thought they were very good, because to me, it makes if we can do it, if we're all on board to do that, it certainly makes the program more complete and more effective. So That's the end of that report. Moving on, the next item then, stay closer. The next item is the Navy COSO Royalty Fund. Again, that's Steve Reich for a short report.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and cover both FY21 and FY22. So this is going to be a good news, bad news presentation. The good news is that, and I really want to make sure that everybody understands that BLM has really, both the BLM and the Navy, but especially the BLM, has gone out to provide us with the right-of-way and the environmental document that will enable us to drill these wells in the Rose Valley area. So that was completed and signed on July 26th and provided to the Navy on July 29th. And we went ahead and worked with Ensign Love and Commander Benson's command to also provide some detail in terms of some description and background information. So as of this point, all the required right-of-way, real estate, and environmental documents have been provided to the Navy for the FY21 Rose Valley Monitoring Well project. Moving on to FY22, we went ahead, we received a form that we filled out to submit for the FY22 funding. It was submitted to the Navy on July 18th, and we received notification on July 31st that it was not selected in lieu of a higher priority project required on the Navy base. So I assume that we can work together hopefully this year to submit for a project for subsequent COSO funding in the future. But that was the bad news portion of my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, the last PowerPoint that we have under the Water Resource Manager report has to do with the configuration management plan. And I don't want to go on for a long time about this, but this is Jean Moran's area. I'm kind of covering for her because she's doing something else, and it was really just an update. And when I do this, I tend to try to go back a little bit and bring people up to speed who may not know what we're talking about here. Way back when we started working on the GSP, we developed a relationship with the Navy, for sure, certainly, and the fact that they had taken on the groundwater basin model and upgraded the basin model, groundwater model, using DRI, Desert Research Institute, which are very, very good folks. And we developed a relationship, the authority developed a relationship with the Navy and DRI to not only use the model, but to also upgrade the model based upon the authority paying the cost. A lot of Prop 1 money was used, but the authority funded the upgrade of that model. That model was used. It's actually, the groundwater modeling is actually required under SGMA. So we had to have a model. This one was already there. A lot of money was saved not having to develop a brand new model. A computerized, digitized model for this basin could easily run $500,000 or more to develop from scratch. So a lot of money was saved to be able to use this model. At that point, that's kind of the history. At that point, we used the model. It was used in the development of the GSP. It's still available. We're still coordinating with DRI and the Navy on a regular basis. A question came up months and months ago about who owns the model and how is it going to be used in the future? How is it generally going to support this GA going forward by the fact that it's tied to the relationship between the Navy and DRI? We did have an agreement to use the model in order to use for the GSP. The work was, the Navy was approached on that concept, and the Navy indicated they had no problem turning over the model effectively, at least turning over the management, control, and the documentation, turning over that level of responsibility for the model, turning it over to the authority. They had no problem with that. But as with, and I apologize to Commander Benson, as with the Navy, they have procedures. Nothing happens without procedures in the Navy. And I'm not very good at them. But one of the procedures is something like this, an arrangement like this, requires something called a configuration management plan. That's a CMP. So when you hear us talk about a CMP, it's a configuration management plan. And what that does is that lays out all of the requirements and responsibilities and the coordination of how that model will be managed if it's turned over and put in the hands of the Groundwater Authority to use. That plan had to be drafted. We had to prepare a configuration management plan. Just a little background on that. Jean started on that plan, and she came up with a couple of examples to use, and she started working on that plan. And I asked her several times how she was coming, and she said she's so busy working on other stuff, on some of the field work we were doing, she hasn't had a chance to get to it. She asked me if I'd take a look at it. So she sent it to me along with the draft plans, and I'm telling you, I was completely lost. I was able to at least put it together and say, here's an outline that I would look at least an outline of it, but I have no idea how to write this. So I gave it back to her. So she took it over, and actually she was able to coordinate with Stefan Bork from the Navy. We actually developed a relationship with Stefan, a contractual arrangement for him to help us. I think it'll help a lot in the future for the authority to have Stefan on board. He's local. He's able to do things that don't require us to drive all the way up here to do field work. He's able to do that kind of stuff. He wants to work on a limited basis. But he also knows a lot about coordination with the Navy and how we do things. So Stefan was very helpful with Jean to put together this draft CMP. They got it put together. We circulated it amongst the staff. I believe it's all been reviewed by the Groundwater Authority staff. And now we're going to kick it out to the PAC and the TAC. The TAC, we want to look at it for the technical issues. We will be creating there's a requirement to create what we used to call, we called it a modeling team for the GSP. This will be more of a CMP modeling team in order to implement the provisions of the CMP. It'll be a technical group. They have to be versed in the engineering, the hydrogeology, highly technical people, and modeling have to be versed in modeling work. So we're going to put a qualified technical team together, similar to the other modeling team, to implement that plan. So we're going to need comments from the TAC on approaches and how we do certain things, again, within the limits of the CMP, because there are requirements. The Navy's, just to back up a minute and understand, the Navy's interest in this is really very, very important. The Navy used this model for their planning of their water supply and things that are going on the base. So they're comfortable with the model to use as their guide on how this basin should be modeled. Therefore, any changes to the model need to be run through the CMP that would have Navy personnel looking at it and making sure that the impacts of the changes, first of all, technically justified, technically documented, technically done right, and that they don't harm the Navy and the Navy's interests. So the Navy will continue to be actively involved in use of this model under that CMP. So we're putting together the technical, after we get comments from the TAC and the PAC, we will be putting together the technical team and get that thing started on using that model going forward. We certainly need to use that model for the 5-year update. And as fast as time goes, it's going to be here before we know it to do that 5-year update of the GSP. From the PAC, we're going to distribute to the PAC for policy issues. I don't know there's a lot of policy issues associated with the CMP, but at least the PAC should look at it. I mean, I think a procedure, we should look at that. So that's what's going on. It'll be out for the PAC and TAC. If it's not out already, it will be out for the PAC and TAC to look at. And I think that concludes my report. I think Gene's faster.
Okay. And did we have a follow-up?
Yes.
One more item that you said you were going to bring in at the end? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joseph, did you want to go ahead and pick up the last PowerPoint on the Prop 1 Round 3 funding?
Yeah, I think now is a good time. So and I'm sure Steve has mentioned this before, but we've been continuing to look at and research and evaluate potential grant opportunities for the Groundwater Authority and compare them to the Groundwater Authority's ongoing projects for Sigma implementation. We came across this grant opportunity under Prop 1. This is Round 3 of the Groundwater Grant Program funding administered by the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Financial Assistance. This grant is for implementation phase projects that prevent or clean up contaminated groundwater that has served or currently serves as a source of drinking water supplies. There's been a total of about $190 million available to be administered as grant funds. About $70 million of this is reserved for disadvantaged communities. Now, this is the third round of Prop 1 funding under this program. The previous two rounds have both been open to both planning phase and implementation phase projects, but the state has indicated that this final round is open only to implementation phase. And by implementation, they're talking about design, construction, pilot studies, initial facility startup, where planning phase or feasibility level analysis has already been completed. The state does have a specific definition of contamination. They're looking for contamination through exceedance of a primary maximum contaminant level or notification level. So a pretty specific definition for that. Some of the examples of eligible projects that we've seen include wellhead treatment, installation of new wells with combined treatment, source area cleanup, centralized groundwater treatment. So our conclusions for this grant are really that there's very limited potential at this time for it to fund any projects that are currently being implemented by the GA. There is a pretty strict deadline for getting these initial concept proposals due on September 7th. The grant solicitation opened, I believe, on July 6th. So they're only giving about 2 months or so for initial concept proposals to be submitted. And the idea is that eligible agencies would submit these initial proposals. They'll be reviewed by the state board, and around November of this year, the state board will invite eligible applicants to submit a full proposal. And a full proposal would be similar in extent and content to the Proposition 1 grant application that we submitted several years ago. But again, I think our conclusions for this, Steve, are that there's limited opportunity for the GA to get involved in this grant opportunity.
Thank you, Joseph. And Mr. Chairman, I think that's it for the Water Resource Manager report.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So at this time, we'll bring it back. Item number 7, Water Resources Manager's report for public comment. Do we have any public comment from the floor?
Judy Decker again. And in regards to your, now I can't think of the name of it, the shallow well mitigation plan, as a member of the PAC, I have never received that, nor did I ever receive the information, Steve, I requested from your organization several months ago. I do have some verbal comments on it, however. Your shallow mitigation plan is totally impractical. And I'll give you a verbal picture to think about. In the early part of July, we had almost a month of temperatures hovering around 120. Think of the guy that lives on 5 acres. His house is sort of in the middle. He doesn't have much in the way of water storage. Many of the small domestic well owners do not. And his well no longer is pumping water. It happens suddenly. He's going to come down, get a hold of your report, fill out all the paperwork and submit it as it's 120, and he doesn't have any water. You folks are doing perhaps your best, but you people at Stetson are city people. You need to think like country people. It's not the same. If you turn on your sink faucet and it doesn't work, you call your local water district or city or whoever provides you water. When you are on a private well or even a co-op and you don't have water, you're going to act, and you're going to act as quickly as you can, and that means you're going to call up a well a well driller or someone who repairs wells and get someone out there as soon as you can. So you need to put the realistic things in your well management plan. Otherwise, it's just another set of papers. Thanks.
Judy, can I ask you a question? What was it? You said something about a request you submitted a month ago.
I believe it was the corrected, it was the response that Stetson sent to the state, their annual report. It was something Stan had asked for, and I asked for it also, but I never did get the shallow well mitigation plan. Don even asked me about it because he got it for TAC, but I never got it, and I didn't know I was supposed to till I was reading the board package for today.
Okay. I'll make sure that it goes with April. Oh, it was sent.
Yeah, other PAC members did receive it because they sent comments in, so we'll have to coordinate with April that you're on the PAC list.
Yeah, it got missed. And as far, Judy, as far as you're following up on Stan's request, I'll look for both of those, but if either one of you have it after the meeting, could you send it to me again? But I'll make a note and go look for it also.
Okay, any other public comment from the floor? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the phones.
That's me.
Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee West-Lusk. I have a question about the last report that Joseph Montoya gave on the new Proposition 1 grant funding opportunity. You're saying it looks at cleanup, contamination of water, but there's limited potential funding for any projects for the IWVGA. Is it worth even applying for, and how much will it cost to apply for this grant?
Renee, I can tell you that the first one is just conceptual, so it probably wouldn't, maybe 8 or 10,000 maybe to put a conceptual together. I don't know of a conceptual that we have on the table right now, but the first application is just a conceptual project submittal. And then if they like the conceptual, they'll let you know, and then you have to put a full application together. Full applications cost $25,000, $35,000 to put a full application together. They're not cheap.
So is it really in our economic interest, the GA's economic interest, to spend that kind of money on something that's a really slim chance of getting any funding?
Renee, we're recommending no.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Renee. Next caller. Okay, seeing no further public comment, we'll bring it back to the board for any discussion or comments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just wanted, with the COSO royalty funds there, I did want to mention 2 items. So it was mentioned that we're working now for the 2021 project out at Rose Valley Wells, monitoring wells out there. So we're working to put together a cooperative agreement, because that's kind of the last piece now that we have all the information, to get the money actually over to you all so it can be executed with the project that you have. So that's what Ensign Love from our team there at the Public Works Department is working with Stetson to get that put together. Probably a couple of months to put that whole thing in place. And then the other, I just wanted to mention a little bit more about the 2022 submissions. So again, we have a real short time. Thank you for turning it in timely. It was great. We had 5 submissions total for projects this year, ranging from the study that you all had submitted. The project that actually ended up being selected was out in one of the remote parts of the North Range, a PV array that needs to be replaced. So there's sections of the base that we don't have shore power to, and so that was the project that met the highest mission priority of the 5 that were submitted. So I just want to report out for that for this year, just so you know. And looking forward to working with you all again next year. Well, I actually won't, but the team will, as this is maybe be retired by next year's go around. But it'll be the kind of the same timeline. Last minute in July, they'll give us the rule book and the things that we have to follow with it. We'll have just a couple of weeks to turn around. It doesn't vary too much, so good to start working on it here this fall, so we're ready to go when April, May, June, July, whenever they release the new requirements comes out. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Okay. So I just had one question, I think, for Steve. So back to the shallow well mitigation plan. So we're looking at revamping that plan in ways, specifics, and that's going to go back before the pack and tack?
Yes.
And so will it be addressing some of the very issues that was brought up in public comment from Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
And so, because I had a question about that too, on the same line, looking at the 10-day, it comes to the board and there's 10 days to, respond back. And if there's an expediency to, there's I see a lot of issues that need to be, kind of addressed there. How quick can we determine that it is a result of, the water droppage, or is it a result of equipment failure on, the well owner and some of those specifics. But, all right, and that's all I had. So that will be addressed in it.
Yes, it will. And again, it'll be up to the board to either modify or approve the plan that we bring to the board. But to be proactive, my thought on it, because we read the comments, we talked about it internally, my thought on it is that to be proactive like that, to make it a real proactive plan, we probably would set up a fund for emergencies, immediate actions that will have a process to apply for and a process to actually implement and use the money, probably through your general manager to give some authority to do that with certain qualifications. We need to put that into the plan. We didn't really anticipate fronting money for projects when we didn't have an evaluation done already. But as pointed out, if you really need help, that doesn't help you very much. But setting aside some funds for emergency actions, certainly makes sense. And so that's going to be the biggest change in the plan for the board to look at.
Okay. Very good. Okay, seeing no further comments, we will move on to item number 8. Board review and approval of addendum number 1 to existing consultant services agreement to 03-19 with California Rural Water Association. This will be presented by Joseph or Jeff.
Yes, I think it's Jeff or Joseph, and possibly, I know Carol's on. I think Carol's involved in this too, but anybody who wants to start.
Let me just say that I mentioned this at the last meeting during my report talking about the SDAT grant programs, that we would be looking at an amendment to our work program to allow the monies that weren't used as part of the rebate program to be added to the audit and leak repair program. So staff has worked out an addendum to the existing agreement, and Joseph has put a lot of work into that, and I'd like for him to just go ahead and review that.
Thank you, Carol. So the purpose of this agenda item, as Carol said, is to bring forth to the board an amendment to the Consultant Services Agreement 0319 with the California Rural Water Association. There has been some unused grant funding under the authority's rebate program under Prop 1 that was transferred over to the Water Audit and Leak Detection Program to put to use rather than just to let that funding sit there. So we've been working at a staff level with the Rural Water Association to identify what sort of work could be done with those additional grant funds. We've identified about $100,000 of unused grant funds that could be put to use. And so we've been working with the Rural Water Association to identify additional work that can be done related to water conservation. And we've identified a few items such as a flow meter changeout program, and preparing water conservation and drought management and drought resilience planning documents. And the purpose of these would be to assist severely disadvantaged community water systems in implementing strategies for efficient water use and conservation and drought preparedness. So again, we're asking for the board to approve this addendum to Agreement 0319. This addendum would add a new Task 6 to the scope of work of the agreement that would summarize the work and the deliverables that the Rural Water Association will be preparing. The addendum also provides a modified budget to add the additional $98,000 in transferred grant funding to the Rural Water Association's budget, and the addendum would also revise the termination date of the agreement, extending it until October 31st of next year. That would allow for completion of the existing work that has been on hold that the Rural Water Association is working on, as well as this additional conservation work. The staff's recommendation is that the board approve this addendum number 1, and upon your approval, we'll go ahead and execute this addendum with the Rural Water Association.
Do we have anything else to add? Okay. And at this time,
I think that's our recommendation.
Okay. So we'll bring it back to public comment. Do we have any public comment from the floor? Okay, seeing no public comment from the floor, any public comment on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for any discussion or questions. None? Any of the other directors have any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it forward for a motion. I'll make a motion to approve. I just made a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Chairman Heyman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rotora?
Aye.
Director Scrivener?
Aye.
Director Itmeyer?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Okay. Motion approved. We will move on to, well, at this time I want to ask the board if we want to take a break. We're going to take a break, but I just want to find out if we want to go ahead and do it before we move on to the next item. I think it might be a good idea.
Well, I suppose if it's going to be a break, it should be long enough to grab a bite to eat. Otherwise, I'd rather move forward so that we can get to the point where we're able to grab a bite to eat.
So go ahead and move on. And
Yeah,
I agree with consensus that we'll. Okay, then let's go ahead and move on to item number 9. Board discussion on financing the replenishment fee. This will be presented by Carol.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So last month, well, let me back up a little. At our meeting last month, we received quite a few complaints and comments from members of the public with regard to the impact of the authority's replenishment fee on the rates that are charged by the Indian Wells Valley Water District. And in addition to the comments that we received at the meeting, staff also has been receiving quite a few phone calls with complaints. So as a result, you directed us at the last meeting to revisit the issue of the impact of the replenishment fee and come back with recommendations for actions that could basically reduce the impact of the fee on customers of the district. And you'll all recall that when the replenishment fee was adopted, it was adopted with an assumption that those affected by it could and potentially would seek long-term financing because there's benefits associated with that. So staff, again, has looked at this and determined that the water district is the best party at this time to take action. And accordingly, we'd recommend that the board authorize the chairman to send a letter. But first, let me go into a little bit more detail. There's a letter in your packet. There's also a report in your packet, and I'm going through that now. We know that the only way for us to achieve sustainability for the groundwater basin is to bring in supplemental imported water. And we know that there's a good sized price tag associated with that. And we have an immediate need to address that. And in line with that, last August, the authority adopted its replenishment fee in an amount calculated to fund the cost of acquiring the title to a permanent supply. And we're projecting that the total cost of the water that the district will need will be about $22.5 million. And we need to make that purchase now. The authority needs to purchase this water as soon as possible because we know that the costs are going to continue to increase. And as SGMA continues to be implemented throughout the state, these imported water supplies are going to become harder to find and harder to purchase. So it's imperative that we try to make these purchases as soon as possible and that we have the money to make them as soon as possible. We know that financing the purchase is the best way to spread the costs out and ease the impact. Unfortunately, the authority has had some limitations in being able to do that ourselves. Obviously, it's possible, but because of the challenges in court to our fee, we've not been in a position up until now to finance these costs. However, the district is a good candidate to do that. The district could obtain a loan, bonds, or make other financing arrangements that would provide the total cost of the water needed up front and then spread the repayment of that over a longer period of time. And this would have the following benefits. First, as I said, we'd be able to make that purchase immediately, and that would save us money in the long term by being able to purchase the water before the costs continue to rise. Second, we estimate that payment over a 30-year period would result in a huge increase or decrease in the rates that the district charges its customers. The district currently charges the replenishment fee at $1.70 per 100 cubic feet on each customer's water bill for an average increase of about $25 per month or $300 per year for a typical customer. But using some recent financial projections that we obtained from a financial analyst, and those are included in your packet in this report in Exhibit A, we project that the payments on a 30-year bond could reduce this fee from $1.70 per 100 cubic feet down to about 42 cents per 100 cubic feet. And that's a huge decrease. Obviously, it would only be about $6.20 increase to the typical customer as opposed to $25 per month. And that could equate to about $18.80 per month for the average customer, or approximately 75% overall. Now, the district had some different calculations. When they did this analysis, they had determined that financing it would cost about 90 cents per 100 cubic feet as opposed to $1.70, resulting in a savings of about 47%. The figures that we received were just recently obtained, though, as recently as last week. And finally, a financing fee would be fairer to the current ratepayers. We know that the purpose of the fee is to secure groundwater for the long term. So it's reasonable to say then that this cost doesn't need to be borne right now by current ratepayers, but could fairly be spread over future ratepayers as well. Authority staff is not aware of any impediment preventing the district from implementing a financing plan. I believe that various staff of the authority has attempted to discuss this matter with district staff, but we haven't, to this point, come up with any meaningful results. We don't believe that the district has, we've been informed that the district has not considered this long-term financing option in open session or taken public comment on it. So staff has prepared a proposed letter, and we're proposing that the board direct the chairman to submit the letter to the board of directors of the water district for their consideration and review, hopefully at their next meeting in September. Happy to ask questions. Also, Joseph with Stetson helped put together the costs and performed the financials, so he will assist with any technical questions regarding the financial calculations.
Okay, thank you, Carol. We'll open it up to public comment at this time. So any public comment from the floor?
Yeah, this is, are we asking for public comment from the board, or are we going to take public comment and then have comments from the board?
Well, I've opened it up to the public first.
Okay, that's what I was making sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mike Neal. First, I want to respond to the statement that was made that the only way to attain sustainability is imported water. I'd like to say that we do not know that the only way to attain sustainability is to import water. There's been things that just have simply not been looked at by this board. They haven't considered the good possibility of pitching the water from the recycled water from the wastewater treatment plant and treatment of brackish water as new sources of water to the state. That argument can be made, and I believe is a logical thing to be made, and would gain a good bit of extra water as recharge into the basin. It also has been poorly lacking in looking at the El Paso area water source, which is reported to be quite a bit of water there that might be something that could be brought into the basin and added to the water supply. We might not even need imported water, but the McGleason way was jump ahead of the gun and let's go tax people like crazy and grab $50 million and go buy a bunch of water from who knows where. In the drought-ridden Southwest, somewhere magically water is going to appear and we're going to get it. Well, so now the GA wants to make the water district the financing arm of the GA because apparently the GA is not financially viable enough to go get a large loan. So they think they want to talk the water district into doing this. Well, let's look at the numbers. Number one, the numbers that were put on this particular page here where you've got this little chart are pretty misleading because they're just basically confusing. But the basics are that you don't want 5,000 acre feet of water. You want 25,000 acre feet. You want 5,000 acre feet every year for 5 years. Now, the number of $22,000 on the part of the water district is accurate as far as what that's going to cost. But when you finance it, it becomes $33 million borne out over the 30 years. So you make the people pay more. It's kind of like saying, well, here, we're going to sell you this really nice fancy car, and we'll make you a 10-year loan. It'll be worn out before you get through paying the loan off on it, but, it won't cost you a lot every year. So that's a good deal, right? No, it's not a good deal because everybody knows, who thinks about this for 30 seconds, that in another 5 years, you're going to want to go redo this all over again. So you're going to come back to the water district and say 5 years from now go get another $22 million loan that's going to cost $33 million to the ratepayers. And how many times do you think the water district could even conceivably even do that? Well, not very many. So why is this a good idea? I'm just not seeing it. The only good thing about this idea is it takes heat off of the GA board from having the reality of what all this is costing people, hopefully, on their part anyway. Takes the heat off of them. Oh, it's only going to cost you 40-something cents an acre foot instead of $1.70. Well, yeah, but for a lot longer period of time, and in 4 or 5 years, we're going to double that all over again. So how happy are, well, maybe you'll all be out of here and you won't have to bear the heat. But I say, face up to the music, let people see what they're having to actually pay, and maybe enough of them will get mad enough to kick you guys out of here, and let's get a board that can do it right.
Mr. Chair, can I correct something that was just said that I think might confuse people?
Yes, go ahead.
It was suggested that we're looking to buy entitlement for 25,000 acre feet of water per year or for 5 years or something. That's obviously incorrect. Again, we need 5,000 acre feet of entitlement in perpetuity. We're going to have to secure more water than that in order to get the 5,000 into the basin. But it's not 25,000. It's like 8,000 and something. Okay, just wanted to make that clear.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the phones now. Caller, go ahead.
Hello, this is Renee Westalusk, and I just have a question. Won't financing over the long term actually save money because the cost of buying water rights for water importation are just going to escalate? That's one of my questions. And then to clarify what Mr. Neal said, brackish water is not considered new water. It's still part of the basin, and so is the El Paso area. And I defer to Mr. Johnson. I'm sure he will concur with me. Thank you.
Go ahead, Steve.
She's correct.
Very good.
She's also correct about the cost of water.
Yes.
Thank you, Renee. Next caller. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Ron Kosinski. Been a long time. I'm looking at this request from the GA for the water district to finance the replenishment fee in total. I keep hearing about no impediment has been shown before. People could remember that in the past this has been discussed maybe briefly at the GA and possibly at the water district. And the biggest impediment is this. The water district recently entered a bond issue to consolidate debt and to proceed with capital projects. They have a 5-year plan on the board for additional projects to keep the system operational and adequate to service their ratepayers of millions of dollars as well. And there may be the possibility of wastewater treatment with millions of dollars as well. So what I'm saying is that if you're asking the water district to do this, you're asking them to extend their possible credit to the limit. So that if they did this and they had to have capital money for improvements and to keep the system operational, they probably wouldn't be eligible for any more borrowing. I think it's unfair to ask them that. And just because you guys are receiving complaints about the replenishment fee that are showing up on people's bills, that is the only reason for this request to the water district. This has been discussed before, and it will be looked again, I'm sure, by the water district, hopefully at an open meeting to discuss this further. But I highly recommend that this doesn't move forward, because all it does is put the ratepayers at risk of a crumbling, possibly crumbling system, which needs to be improved and continually improved to service the community. Thank you.
Okay, next caller. Okay, seeing no further public comment, we will now bring it back to the board for discussion.
So, yeah, this is John.
I think Chairman Vallejo's, go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that was an interesting comment from Mr. Kaczynski. Ron, good to hear your voice again. Hope things are well. Stan, can you confirm what Ron was saying, or is that accurate in some or most regards? It's curious that this is on its face at least an interesting option that the water district could pursue, and it's curious that the water district apparently hasn't. At least
we have a continuous capital improvement program that we fund, and we do have scheduled bonds already that we expect to take out. We don't know the exact numbers, but for sure we do have capital improvement ideas already on the board that will have to be funded. And so anything we add to it obviously is going to increase the burden on the ratepayers. I don't want to speak quantitatively to it because, quite frankly, I'm not sure what all the numbers are, but there certainly are capital improvements already on the drawing board.
So is this letter something that's offensive to you think the water district would find to be offensive, or is it something that you'd be willing to discuss over there with the water district?
John, could you please repeat your comment and maybe speak in the mic a little bit closer so that Stan can hear you?
Yeah, sorry about that. So I guess I'm wondering, is this something, if the GA sends this letter, is this something that the Water District will actually consider and discuss at an open meeting? Or is there some reason why the Water District wouldn't discuss this issue?
I'm sorry, I still didn't hear you.
So he's asking if this letter is something that you would bring back to the Water District, and it's something that they would entertain and look into.
Oh, if the letter goes out, we will respond to it, absolutely. There's no question about that.
Stan, you got to speak into the mic, please.
Speak into the mic.
So. Oh, if the letter goes out and is sent to the Water District, we obviously will respond to it. There's no question about that. We have every intention of working with GA.
Yeah, I guess this is Tim. I guess I have kind of basically a similar type of question of whether would this letter be helpful from the Water District's point of view as far as helping to spur a debate on this? Well, as a general rule, as someone who's worked at all different levels of government, I tend to be kind of skeptical of one government body telling another one how to handle kind of their internal issues, especially when the Water District has been paying the fee right now. So it's not like we're telling you to pay the fee. Use this as a way to pay the fee because you haven't been. Since that's not the issue, I'm a little skeptical unless this would be helpful. And if this would be helpful to facilitate a debate, then I'm all for it in that case.
Again, sorry if you all are talking there, we can't hear you.
So there, we had a comment asking Tim to identify himself and John to identify himself.
Oh, hey, sorry. This is Tim Itnyer, the San Bernardino County representative on the board.
Yeah, and this is John Blue Hill with Inyo County.
Any other comments from the directors of the board?
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
This is directed again to Member Retora. It was nice hearing from former Director Kaczynski, but he seemed to suggest, I thought the gist of his comments was that the Water District might have a problem with its creditworthiness. Is that correct in any way?
If you want me to respond, you need to get closer to the mic.
So can you not? You guys can't hear me. I said that former Director Kaczynski seemed to suggest that it would be difficult for the district to engage in the kind of financing that's been suggested in the staff report because there's some kind of issue with the district's current creditworthiness. At least that's what I got from his comments. Did I hear that correctly, and is that an accurate statement?
We have multiple items on the table right now regarding future funding. I can't comment right now as to what the criticality of any of those are, but I can assure you that we will respond to a letter if this group sends it to the Water District.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And we'll give you the straight answer.
Okay, the other thing that struck out about his comments, and again, I don't know if this at all reflects the district's feelings, but he mentioned something about crumbling infrastructure, and do you have any sense of what he was referring to?
We have some storage tanks right now, a few $1 million worth of storage tanks that we had to actually replace because of the earthquakes, and it turns out that we couldn't get funding from the grants because...
I'm sorry, this is Phil. We can't hear Stan at all.
These are old tanks that weren't eligible for grant funding. So yeah, there's new money that is currently being spent.
I see. And then to Director Ittmeyer's comments, I think what I'm hearing is if the letter is sent, then that will stimulate a debate and response from the district. Is that correct?
No question about it. We will respond.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to make a comment and a question. I think we all received a letter from DWR in the middle of last month. One of the things that came out of that letter was that DWR is willing to provide support and assistance to us. Obviously, we have to ask for it. One of the items that they listed was financial assistance. I was wondering if we have actually touched base with DWR in trying to get, they've got half a dozen different pots of money that they can provide for grants or loans, and it would seem that is one avenue that we need to pursue.
I can address that, Chairman Heyman. I have reached out to the person responsible for the letter. That was related specifically to the adjudication that your entity filed. And the offer was a facilitator to help resolve those claims. We expressed a willingness to engage on behalf of the GA going forward. And so far, at this point, there's a lot of moving parts, as you know, and so we're waiting to hear.
Yeah. I was referring specifically to the $22 million, or actually, I guess the total is more like $50 million for the total amount of entitlement that we need. And I appreciate the fact that you've reached out regarding the adjudication, but this is more immediate and specific to only the Table A water entitlement. And if we haven't spoken directly, I would suggest that maybe we look into that venue.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were referring to the offer of a facilitator letter. As far as DWR funding for the Table A water, I'd have to turn that over to Steve.
I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. Thank you, Director Vittoria. I think you know that we got not only GA staff, but a lot of the people in the community are looking at all of the funding available. So we have a lot of eyes looking out for funding. I doubt very seriously you'll see any DWR funding to buy Table A entitlement, but it's a possibility. It's a good question. We're going to have Capital Corps coming on for their report, and it'll be a great question to ask them to see what their thoughts on it, because they're a little more versed on available funds through the state than we are. We keep an eye out for what's coming up. We try to stay ahead of that game, but it might be a good question for Capital Corps.
I'm sorry, Chairman Heyman, this is Phil Hall. I guess this is the best time to bring this up. We missed online all of the conversation about, I guess, tanks that Stan was saying. He wasn't talking into his microphone. Am I hearing this right, that the Water District has crumbling tanks, I guess is the word that was used by Ron?
Are you referring to the storage tanks, reservoir tanks that I was talking about?
I couldn't tell what you were exactly saying, Stan, because you started talking and you were at some point talking about tanks.
I think one of the things that Ron was referring to, although quite frankly, with the microphones and everything, I didn't hear him very well. But nonetheless, we are right now putting in new reservoirs and storage tanks because of the earthquake damaged some, and we were not able to get state assistance in replacing them. They were too old, and they wouldn't replace them at current zone or standards, and so basically we couldn't get any funding at all. So we do have a good deal of costs immediate, and then obviously we have continuing maintenance costs to keep our whole infrastructure up. Ron was absolutely right, is that we don't just have money hanging around that we don't have something planned for. And we have actual plans for borrowing money in the future to maintain those facilities.
This is Jim Worth. Chairman Hayman, may I make a comment, please, on behalf of the district?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't believe Director Ratora answered Phil's question, and that is, notwithstanding the fact that the district is having some work in putting in new storage tanks, I do not think it's accurate to describe the district's facilities as crumbling infrastructure. Quite the contrary. We have and we continue to upgrade and maintain the facilities. And for a better idea of the state of the facilities, that should go to the district GM, Don, as opposed to the director. So that's all I have in that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple comments. So one of my concerns is that the ratepayers are paying more than they need to pay for water. And so looking at ways to reduce the replenishment fee, I feel is a good area to be looking at and to make an action on. If we're able to lower the replenishment fee and still, over a long period of time, and still gather the revenues that we need to purchase the imported water, I like that idea. I look at this as a means for the water district to come to the table and work collaboratively with the GA to address this issue. It would lower the water rates for the for the ratepayers approximately 75%. I think that's a good thing. We'd be able to purchase water earlier, sooner than later. Costs are just going to go up, and so likewise, non-action on the item, I think it just stands to cost the ratepayers more money in the long run. I think it also will escalate costs of infrastructure and costs of water, even if you're able to get water in the future. So the I guess the word I'm looking for here is the supply-demand aspect of it. The outlook is bleak, I think, the longer that we wait to do this. So, the overall action, I think, is a good action for, bottom line, the ratepayers and being able to purchase water sooner. So, I do have another question, too, in regards to the current legal findings or outcomes that we've recently had. So, how does that affect the GA in regards to other options in financing the water needs?
Well, as you say, the current legal challenges to the replenishment fee would be an impediment for the GA as opposed to the water district to issue the financing. It could be theoretically possible for the GA to do the financing. There might be some economic advantages to that of the water district portion only, because we know that the water district has, as a policy matter, recognized the need for the imported water, as Mr. Ratora has reminded us on several occasions, and is committed to paying the replenishment fee going forward. The issue becomes the fact that it's a little strange, but at the end of the case in front of the trial court, whenever that is, it could be a month from now, it could be 6 months from now, the parties there would have the right to appeal, and then that matter would go up on appeal, and that process would take another couple years. And so theoretically, there's the possibility that an appellate court might reverse the trial court, and now we're talking probably 2.5, 3 years from now at the earliest. And that would then potentially jeopardize the fee. However, it does occur to me that if the water district were to sort of separately guarantee payment somehow, that might be enough to satisfy lenders. I don't know. I'm speculating here. I'm just shooting some ideas, but basically, the litigation, because of the risk of the appeal, is an impediment, presumably from the GA doing this. On the other hand, I have to say that if for some reason the parties who were challenging the fee, remember, they're going to be required to pay it now going forward during the cost of the appeal. If those parties, Mojave and Searles, were to say dismiss their challenges to the fee, then it could be potentially not only possible to finance the fee to the water district, but then also for those parties as well, reducing the cost to them. So they will be, at this point, faced with a choice of paying full freight on the fee and then maybe a few years from now having the opportunity to potentially reverse it, or working out perhaps a deal with the GA to finance the fee and reduce the cost significantly over a longer period. And so that's what we're currently looking at, I guess, from the legal side. Let me add one other thing. Earlier, Member Torah mentioned the possibility of DWR money to help with purchasing water, and I think Mr. Johnson pointed out that that doesn't seem like it would be eligible for that. I just want to point out that there is you're going to hear in the Capital Corps report in a couple minutes that there's another problem too that's more significant, and that is that the fact that the adjudication has been filed could potentially jeopardize all money coming from the DWR, and you're going to hear about that in a second. So it could be that by filing the adjudication, we're actually cutting off the ability to get money from the DWR. And but again, I'll refer to Capital Corps to give you more details.
I would suggest that all that considered, there's absolutely no harm in asking, and they did seem that like they wanted to be helpful in the letter that was sent. I think, we want to be helpful. Everybody wants to be helpful. Everybody wants to cooperate. And asking DWR for assistance is, I think, wholly in the realm of possibilities.
Don't take from my comments that I'm suggesting anything different.
So I kind of see the wanting to be helpful and the actually being helpful as two different aspects. Listening to Keith Lemieux just give that explanation, it's pretty easy to see that minimizing legal challenges and coming to the table and working on solutions have far better outcomes and cost far less money. I mean, in the layman's term, I think that's kind of it on the head. And, concern coming from myself, being on the city council and the constituents of Ridgecrest, I want to see their rates go down. And I would like to see the water district come to the table and as DWR said in that letter, work collaboratively as a group to find solutions to minimize the costs, to get action steps going. So I'm in favor of, pursuing this. I don't have any other way to put it, but any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing no further comments, we will look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send the letter.
Do we have a second? I'll second it.
Chairman Heyman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rotorua?
Abstain.
Director Scrivener?
Aye.
Director Itmeyer?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Okay, so at this time we're going to take a break. Let's take a poll on how long do we want to break for? 20 minutes? 20 minutes good? Okay. So it is, we're good. So let's go roughly 1:40. Okay, we're going to resume the meeting. It is 1:45. And we will begin by moving to item number 10, board discussion and direction on reengagement of the Policy Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. This will be presented by Carol and jointly with Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Go back to this report. And I think Steve Johnson's going to assist me with this. We've we had a request to look at re-engaging the PAC and the TAC, and we know that as a result of COVID, our meetings were generally suspended, although the TAC has continued to operate informally just through electronic means. So we've come back with some recommendations for each one. Essentially, we're looking to reinstate the meetings of the PAC, the Policy Advisory Committee. The PAC chair has expressed an interest in resuming in-person meetings with a proposed schedule hold date of the fourth Thursday of each month, 5 p.m. in the council chambers. And on months that we don't have any agenda items, we could cancel those meetings, but the first meeting would tentatively be held on August 26th this month. Essentially, though, we talked about wanting to streamline the process for getting items for PAC review. The bylaws provide for the board to assign topics for PAC review. We're proposing some amendments to the bylaws that would allow us to have staff, the general manager, basically in coordination with either board members, legal counsel, and or our water resource manager to assign those items directly. And we'd also recommend that the PAC review, the reports on those items, come back to the general manager for review, and then I can put those directly on the board agenda. And the reason for that is just to allow us to interact and have questions and resolve any potential issues before we bring the items or the reports back to the board. And we have in the packet, in the report here, a list of topics that we would like to submit to the PAC for review. We can help prioritize those items, but basically, so we want to confirm the chair and the vice chair, identify who's going to take notes. We need to finalize the current membership, confirm the schedule, hold date and time for the meetings, and then we have several items that we'd like them to review, including the public outreach plan, which we've heard comments about recently, the shallow well impacts mitigation program, the water conservation programs, and the draft ordinance on temporary and emergency water uses. So those are the items that we would recommend the PAC address at the upcoming meeting, assuming that it begins to meet again in person this month. And then, Steve, do you want to review the recommendations for the TAC?
Sure, Carol. Thank you. That's good. Yeah. As everybody knows, we've had a lot of comments going through this COVID period about reinstating both the PAC and the TAC. And I know as staff, we've tried as much as we can to continue engagement with the TAC members, even though it wasn't in person. So there was a discussion about having in-person meetings, and we from the staff's perspective, it seemed to us that we were getting the input from the TAC members that were engaged in providing comments in the meetings, but we were getting them by electronic means already, and we do get good comments. And I can tell you from my perspective and from the staff's perspective, I'm a technical guy, so I'll just say I feel very strongly that the success of this organization is very dependent upon that TAC and coordination all the way through implementation of the GSP. I know the PAC is important too to the board, the policy side of all this. I know they're important. They provide a lot of good comments too, but I just think both of the staff just feels that both of those committees are very, very important to the success of this organization. So that's why we hear the comments, and as the board came back together to have in-person meetings, we work with the board to work out an arrangement to get these committees a little more active. So that's the goal. So right now there are some generally some concerns about the TAC. Membership is one. Since we stopped having meetings, there's been litigation. As you all recall, Adam Bingham was our chair. He was Cyril's. We're not sure. We're going to have to work through GA staff about what Cyril's role is or isn't. I don't have a problem with him being on the having a member on the TAC or not. So we've got litigation from Mojave. They weren't necessarily on the TAC, but they're still provided input. We've got other issues. For example, some organizations that provided a member on the TAC, like the Big Ag had Eddie Teasdale on board, which I think he was primarily being sponsored by Meadowbrook, and I've been reaching out to Eddie. I'm not getting any responses. I'm making the assumption, I'm not giving up, believe me, but I'm making the assumption that with Meadowbrook joining the transient pool and pretty much joining on the process of the solutions that we're trying to put together, that possibly Eddie's not being funded to be able to do that work anymore. So we do need to reach out. Part of the goal here is to reach out to existing TAC members, to keep them engaged, look at the vacancies and the process for filling those vacancies, which involves TAC representatives nominating technical representatives to the TAC. So that will also be on the PAC agenda to look at that. We'll identify those empty seats and get that to the PAC. But the idea is to get this thing back rolling again. I think the approach is for staff, primarily Carol, April, my office, myself, possibly Keith, with legal, if we need legal help on interpretation of the bylaws, what we need to do, to work with the TAC members that are there remotely as much as we can to pull an effective TAC team together, and then continue our outreach to the TAC. And I'll say one last thing. This is both for the PAC and the TAC. Just because you see in this board package that we've identified some topics for both groups, that's certainly not the end-all of topics for you to address. These are primarily topics that we've talked about, that we've heard about, that we've heard comments about, that I've kept a separate file for the PAC and TAC on what needs to be done going forward, because we had the responsibility for helping to develop agenda items. So I try to keep track of those. I think I got most of them, but PAC and TAC, one of the other things we would like you to do certainly is feedback on what you feel the organization is doing, the authorities doing, and you feel the need to provide input on those topics. So that'd be another item. But other than that, I think the recommendation from the staff is to pull the TAC together. I think Carol and April and our office, we can do that pretty effectively, and then re-engage as much as we can for all the technical issues that involve pretty much implementation of the GSP. So that's it.
Okay, so for our board recommendations for today, I guess we would ask you to acknowledge the agenda items that we're proposing to send to the PAC and the TAC, and then consider the amendments to the bylaws, though, in the next agenda item. So our attorney has prepared those for your consideration in a separate item. So for this action, I think we would just be looking for you to basically, if you agree, to go ahead and have us forward these particular items to the TAC and the PAC for review, and then we can move on to amending the bylaws or considering those amendments to allow staff to be able to streamline the process to get those items to them to discuss.
Anything else to add to Carol's? Okay.
This is John Vallejo. I'm generally in agreement with the recommendations. I just, think we should highlight that the cost of having staff attend more meetings is not insignificant, and so I'm not sure how we want to manage that, but that is something that is, I think, needs to be noted.
Absolutely, Director Vallejo, and in fact, it was one of the considerations with the TAC in considering not having regular in-person meetings again, because it helps us to save costs with regard to having the water resource manager attend those meetings on a regular basis. So we definitely wanted to look at cost effectiveness as well, and we think we can manage those electronically, at least for now.
Yep. Carol, this is Steve. I 100% agree with you. It was our recommendation too. Part of the recommendation, probably should have said that, is in order to spend the money that we have more effectively, more efficiently than traveling back and forth and preparing for these meetings and writing and follow up on that. So we generally prepared for, set up, attended, and followed up on all the TAC meetings. We only attended PAC meetings at the request of the board if the PAC requested the board to have us there. So only a handful of PAC meetings would we actually attend. And that'll be the same thing going forward. But I absolutely agree with Director Vallejo. I think this is a very good cost savings measure to operate in this manner. Thanks.
So since we're having a bit of a discussion already, I'll hold public comment till after the board has spoken. But so in your discussion here, Steve, when you mentioned Searles Valley, and were we looking at a member being from the community and Jonah being on the TAC, or TAC and PAC?
I'm not sure. Do we have a Searles member? Did Camille get exchanged in on the TAC? I can't recall. My guy said they did. She's PAC.
She's PAC. Stephen Karakos was TAC, but they appointed him, and then COVID hit, so he never actually engaged in any way. And I haven't seen any engagement through email either.
I think that would be part of our task, is to re-engage with the membership that we have and making sure we have legal counsel support, and then fill those seats.
Okay, I'd be in favor of that. Any other comments from the board?
Yes, I have a couple comments. I do appreciate the efforts to streamline the organization. I do have some questions. On page 1, it talks about allowing the general manager to suggest PAC topics, but it throws in coordination with the board members, legal counsel, and the water resources manager. And my feeling is that might be an overkill. I think we should have enough faith in our general manager that she shouldn't have to contact the world before she can assign a topic to the PAC. That's what she's getting paid for. She can always, at her discretion, contact anybody she wants. I don't think, and by the way, I didn't find anything in the bylaws and the changes that requires her to, so I wasn't actually sure what all the verbiage in the staff report really meant. I would prefer that the general manager just be allowed to assign topics and give her a little bit of discretion. Also on the same page,
and that really is, I'm sorry, Director, that really is the intent. What we're looking at, though, is basically just to allow that interaction for, say, legal counsel to suggest to me, or water resources manager to suggest to us that perhaps these items should go. So it was basically to allow that interaction, not necessarily saying that general manager would need to contact each of those before the items could be assigned.
Okay, good. Also, on the second paragraph there, it says that the stall, which I'm assuming is the staff, also recommends the bylaws be amended to allow the PAC to provide any reports or comments to the general manager before providing them to the board. And I want to make sure that when it says allow, that means if they, at their determination, want to have input from the general manager, that they can receive it. And it makes sense. I mean, and I think they probably will, on occasion, want input. But what I don't want to see is the general manager acting as a filter to policy issues. The board is responsible for policy, and I for one want to know what the PAC is thinking, not what the board is thinking as modified by the general manager. So I want to make sure that that is the understanding.
Absolutely, Director Retora. I don't believe staff has the authority to alter those recommendations. It would really just be an opportunity for staff to answer questions or to work through any issues, so that the PAC might want to make any possible changes before submitting a report to the board. Basically, just to, I think, create a more effective or efficient report and not have questions arise when board is reviewing it, but definitely not to be a filter.
Okay, great. Under the TAC area, it says the staff does not see a need to establish regular TAC meetings, either virtually or in person. For some reason, and I can't provide a reference right now, I thought any standing committee, by definition, had regularly scheduled meetings. They can always be canceled, but my feeling is, somewhere I've read that if you've got a Brown Act a standing committee, you have to have a scheduled time. And my feeling, it's real easy to cancel something. It's a lot harder to try to get a meeting going. And I appreciate the issues regarding cost. It being one of the agencies that actually has some skin in the game, I understand where the money's coming from. So from that standpoint, I don't want to cause additional cost. But my feeling is that the water resources manager could provide his services over video, even if the other people wanted to go to in-person meetings. And my feeling is that the TAC, and I appreciate there's very few people now on it, and I'm hoping that we can generate some additional interest and get some more people, but it should be up to the TAC to determine whether they want to have in-person meetings or they want to do it over video. And one of my primary concerns is that any standing meeting, committee meeting, should have access to the public, and it would be very difficult to coordinate public participation if the meetings aren't scheduled in some way. So I am not in favor of what the staff has proposed. I understand the reasoning, but my feeling is that after a year and a half of non-TAC meetings, everything that I've seen in the press and verbally been attacked with, my feeling is we really need to go out and get public support, and we're not going to do that with what the staff has recommended. And also, okay, on page 3, there is a comment to the effect that the water resources manager, along with the GA staff as needed, will assist the TAC. And okay, and the next sentence is what I was concerned about, is staff also recommends the TAC reports be directed first to the water resource manager before being presented to the board. I have no problem with being directed to the water resources manager. What I'm concerned about is what the role of the resource manager is after they've been directed to him. Again, it's a matter of we've got some highly qualified people on the TAC. They may not always be right, but I'm assuming that they will indirectly be working with the Water Resources Manager. I don't want to see, again, a filter between the TAC and the board. It's the board's job to look at what the advisory committees are doing, and I want to make sure that we actually get what the TAC as a whole recommends. Or any, I think there's also, you can have alternate TAC reports or whatever recommendations that are not necessarily unanimous, but I think it's important that the board actually see everything. And my last comment is based upon the bylaws as they would be changed, how would a member of the public go about getting a agenda item on either the PAC agenda or the TAC agenda? What would be the loops or hoops that one would have to go through?
Well, I'd suggest
looks like he's chafing at the bit. Carol, do you want to take it?
I would just suggest, Director, that a member of the public could make a request at a board meeting such as this. They could also contact me or April directly or the Water Resources Manager directly to discuss that.
Okay, that's fair.
Also, Director Vitora, the bylaws are different for the PAC and the TAC. For the PAC, the PAC reports directly to the board. The way the bylaws were set up, and this was before I got here, so this way they're set up, the TAC basically advises the Water Resources Manager, who then reports to the board. There are provisions in the bylaws if the TAC is not satisfied with the way the Water Resources Manager is bringing a report or an advice or a suggestion to the board, then there are provisions for the TAC to then go to the board. But the way it's set up right now is the TAC is a support arm, a technical support arm to the Water Resources Manager. So that's just the way it's set up now, and we didn't look to change the bylaws. We tried to make it fit.
And I can go along with that. I don't, as long as if there's a disagreement that the TAC can provide their own report. Okay, that sounds fair. So then actually the only thing that I'm concerned about is the meetings. My feeling is that until we have our first TAC meeting, we're not going to know exactly what the feelings of the TAC members are. And I want to know what the TAC is feeling about having meetings, whether they be in person, on video, or what. My personal feeling, independent of what the TAC even thinks, is that I want to see the public get involved. And the only way that's going to happen is if we have regularly scheduled meetings in a forum where they can attend in person. We have got a lot of public trust to build back, and I think this would be a big help.
We can certainly make that an item for the TAC at the very initial meetings, for sure.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, if I could add, Stan, I understand some of your concerns there with, these issues where, back to say with the general manager, but some of the words that were used in the staff report is coordination with the board. It does not give direction to, alter, change, or, so I'm just saying don't read into it.
Already responded to that.
Yeah, so just,
and I was satisfied with her.
Okay, I see you reading a little far into those things. So, and all right, any other comments from the board? Okay, we will bring it back to public comment. Any public comment from the floor?
Good afternoon. I'm Don Decker, for the record. I'm probably the most active TAC member from the beginning to present. So I have an opportunity here to offer you my observations. I would like to say, I guess, first of all, that Director Ratora's comments about the value of engaging the public, one of the most important things that happened when we actually had live meetings was that the public presence, being a more informal meeting than your board meetings, we didn't necessarily stick to a schedule. Some of them went 3 and 4 hours. And they were opportunities for the public to listen and ask questions. And without those public meetings, all of that interchange is simply not there. And your comments, Stan, that that's a valuable thing is without a doubt absolutely true. And my comments about reestablishing have included that exact comment. The public interface as part of those committee meetings is a really important thing. They were oftentimes at night, and they were more accessible to the public also, not morning meetings that are harder to schedule for a lot of people. The other thing that has happened with the COVID disruptions is that without the public meetings, without the committee meetings, I should say, the members do not have an opportunity to hear other members' comments, points of view. There's a certain amount of interchange that occurs informally, which is fine from my point of view, but it's not the level of interchange that we once had. Part of the problem, of course, is our membership has declined a lot. There are a number of members that we had earlier that have died, and they are simply gone from the committee. And others have dropped by the way, and some were never active in the first place. They were present at various meetings, and they were nominally there, but their contributions were very, very weak. It's hard to find people that are technically qualified that have extra time to do something like this. So I fully support the idea, the direction of trying to find some new members that would be willing to serve, and I'm sure we can find some, but it's not going to be a very successful effort.
Mr. Decker?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Keith. I'm told that the people on the WebEx meeting are having difficulty hearing your comments, so I think these microphones, you have to be right up on them.
Well, I'm more or less.
I can hear you fine, but I guess they can't on the WebEx.
Well, this microphone is not very sensitive either.
None of them are.
You just have to get real close.
I am. I'm close enough. No nasty comment intended. The reestablishment of the committees, I think, to summarize, is a really critical thing to do. And one of the problems that no one has discussed here, Steve didn't mention it either, is that the TAC has no obvious chairperson. And I would assume that responsibility but my health is not very good, and I don't think it's fair for me or for you guys for me to take on the extra work of doing the committee chairperson's work. Plus, what I can really contribute is my decades of experience and understanding of all kinds of aspects of what is involved with this effort, and I don't want to dilute that. So Eddie Teasdale is currently the vice chair, and his headquarters is Northern California, where he lives, and so for him to come down is a pretty expensive thing, plus his time, and Meadowbrook Dairy would be, of course, funding that if they were willing, but, you know, having joined the transient pool step is telling us that they are on a different path than they were earlier. So he has, however, written comment letters, reports, in fact, some quite detailed reports, not that far back. So one thing that can be done is to post our comments, our report letters, without any delays, so that, in fact, the other committee members can read them, can find them, and can presumably learn from what the other committee members are offering. And many of my reports, and I know Teasdale has written probably the one who's written probably the most in the number 2 slot, a lot of those reports are not posted. And I brought this up over and over again. There needs to be an absolutely clear spot for them to be posted into the GSA website, and they need to be there. You guys can read them too. You probably aren't aware of a lot of what has been written. And talking to various of the board members through the many years that we've been doing this, a lot of folks on the board, I'm talking about mostly the earlier board, first board, they were not aware really of what we were doing except when they actually attended committee meetings. So there are things that can be done that are not expensive, and that is posting reports quickly and precisely in the sense of where they end up being posted so that everyone has access to them. I think that's a summary of what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment from the floor?
I'd like to make a comment. Mr. Chairman, as PAC chairman, current PAC chairman, first thing I'd like to say is the PAC is intact. No pun intended. However, I fully support the recommendations of the board with some modifications, and I'll go through those. But I think it is vitally important that the two committees be reconstituted at least as proposed here. And for the PAC, a monthly meeting, the evening meeting on the fourth Thursday meets all the requirements we've already solicited from our intact PAC members, their ability to make that meeting and support for it. Now, we do have some membership issues that we will have to be resolved, but none near where the TAC was. For example, due to the litigation, we had previously had some limitations with regards to Mojave representation. Currently, we have questions arising around Searles and as we heard today, the Indian CSD not having paid the pumping fee. If there are issues with those members on board, so if we're going to have a meeting on the 26th of August, which I am ready for, we are ready for, we'll need to have some collaboration with staff and get direction prior to that, and there will have to be some interface with those entities to clarify and update their representation or not. I would assume the same is the case, obviously, with the TAC membership. I support, and we support fully, face-to-face meetings for the PAC. I would say, additionally, I would support face-to-face meetings for the TAC also. The PAC and the TAC are both vitally and have been vitally important during the formulation of the GSP and this whole process. The technical capability in this valley that the TAC provided and confidence in the public that did participate is beyond parallel. I will say we evolved to a model over the last couple of years where the PAC meeting was in the evening, immediately following the TAC meeting that was in the afternoon. And I found at 90% of the meetings during those last couple of years, over half of the PAC was there in the afternoon following the actions and discussions of the TAC. And also the public was there, and I actually, strangely enough, I made the observation that there was more public attendance at those TAC meetings in the afternoon than there were at the PAC meetings in the evening. But maybe we wore everybody out, because I know the PAC members were also tired by the end of that day. That was a long one. And you have written in the bylaws and the provision that if a standing meeting doesn't need to be held, it can be postponed or vacated that particular month. And I would think that would help for the TAC also. So if you had a placeholder, a standing meeting for both the TAC and the PAC, I think the PAC is going to meet the majority of the time. And when you had specific technical issues, you could have the TAC meet and consolidate expense for staff to cover both meetings if they were in the afternoon or in the evening, as we had done over the last 2 years. I'll make the additional comment on costs. With the improvements in technology and the implementation of it, with the exception of the microphones, in this building and this venue for holding the meetings, we have the ability to have staff do technical or policy-type presentations remotely that would mitigate their needs to be here in person. Now that, of course, has a cost for the facility and those same technical capabilities to be delivered to us, but it's usually much less than having staff attend up here in person, say from Stetson or Carroll or wherever we're importing the staff from that's relevant to that discussion. So my recommendation is let's go forward with this. I would recommend, although I'm not on the TAC, that you also keep the placeholder for standing TAC meetings, and we make a viable attempt, since the PAC nominates TAC members, that we try to reconstitute to the greatest degree possible an active, but don't lower the quality cut required to be a TAC member, so that they maintain the credibility and we maximize the public engagement both on technical issues and policy issues. Last comment, I see for August 26th, you've given us about 8 hours of task items. So we'll need some help prioritizing that. From today's discussions, obviously I see the first 5 tasks as something we could tackle at that meeting. In other words, the getting set to function and then functioning on items 4 and 5. The public outreach plan to update, and the shallow well impact, which we already have had for comment individually. And since we'd like to get that out as soon as possible, those would be the tasks that I would prioritize right away for this group to take on and to get through with adequate due diligence and not limit ourselves too much. And then we as staff can prioritize the additional items when we need to get to them and work through it that way. You have any questions for me?
I do. So on the standing meeting times for the TAC, so would they could be canceled if need be, and then have an appropriate leeway time on cancellation like normal meeting protocol. And then the in-person aspect of it, would that be decided by the chair at some point if they have enough members and get organized enough to get it to that level?
I would think yes, the chair in consultation with the water resource manager and the general manager. And of course, we PAC members voted on getting that for Thursday evening. We can't vote for the potential TAC members that they would be able to do the afternoon of that same day, but given technology, maybe it doesn't have to be. But they would have to, you would have to, where I'm leading to is we also had to get the availability of this room because it's used for many city and other functions on a regularly scheduled basis. I don't recall any that were on the fourth Thursday in the afternoon, but I may be fuzzy on that. So I would say the staff, those three, the TAC chair, the GM, and the water resource manager can decide if it's viable that they have one with lead time in advance to get the public notice and the work done by the committee in advance so that they can have that discussion, and the public and PAC members, if we wanted to attend, can attend.
Any board members have any questions for Mr. Janis?
Judy Decker again. I have a comment. My comment is, any material we are going to discuss on August 26th, if that's the date approved, be sent to us in a timely manner so that we can properly explore it, research it if need be, and have intelligent comments at our meeting. Prior PAC meetings, unfortunately, had material come in at the 11th hour that it was impossible to read, digest, and comment on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take public comment from the phones. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee Westelusk. I just need some clarification because I am a policy advisory committee member, and what I wanted to know for sure, are the meetings going to be videotaped like they were before the COVID-19 shutdown of the PAC and the TAC meetings? And there seems to be I don't know if, I guess we're still required to do minutes, but there was a big problem with minutes for the Policy Advisory Committee before the shutdown. And I think it's better if the meetings are videotaped, then we don't really need to do minutes. I think that's mainly my questions. Thank you.
Can I address that, Mr. Chairman? She's absolutely right. We had some issues. That was part of the Mojave thing and actually some other hiccups, but we never had issues with reports. So if you make the chair and the committee responsible for submitting a written report, that is a summary, a briefer summary than some of those got to be, and yet we have a video record of the actual live conduct of the meeting. I think the report is sufficient, and we don't want to be required to have official minutes on top of a report and a public recording, virtual recording that is retained in perpetuity.
So in answer to Renee's question is the videotaping would be performed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All my comments made when I first spoke were based on the predicate that these meetings would be recorded.
Does that answer your question, Renee?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
it was going to be videotaped, because before when we were doing minutes, it was an issue about cost to do the videotaping. So eventually we got the videotaping, but I didn't know if cost was going to be a factor again.
Okay. I agree, Renee. We did get that straightened out. And my assumption was, in fact, the only options we had available to select from to reestablish this meeting were those when this council chamber and videotaping capability were offered to us. They had to be deconflicted. So that was predicated, that schedule was predicated on that assumption.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
Thank you, Renee. Any other callers? Okay, seeing no further callers, we'll bring it back to the board for any further comment or discussion. I think we had our discussion already, but and hearing none, we'll go ahead and look for a motion.
I move we accept the staff report.
Second.
Chairman Heyman.
Aye.
Vice Chair Rotora.
Aye.
Director Scrivener.
Aye.
Director Itmeyer.
Aye.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Okay, very good.
Excuse me, Chairman Heyman, this is Phil Hall. I believe the motion was adopt the staff report, not the staff report and the resolution, which makes the changes. But maybe I just didn't hear it with the microphone.
Yeah, the item, the agenda item that we were talking about was, what, 10?
Yeah, agenda item 11, which I'll present.
And
now as a
11 is
resolution.
the bylaws, which I'm assuming you will have a separate
Next item.
motion for.
Okay, so we can go ahead and move forward. All right. So moving on to item number 11, resolution number 06-21, amendment to sections 5.4, 5.5, 5.7, and 5.9 of the bylaws. This will be presented by Steve Johnson.
No, it's going to be presented by me.
Sorry.
Very quickly.
Keith Lemieux.
Yeah, this is the resolution that's the follow-up to the last item. The resolution does two things. It makes it so that items can be referred to the PAC by the general manager as well as the board, as we've just discussed at length, so we don't need to go into much more detail about that. It does one other thing, though, and that is it allows a representative to be on the PAC from the Trona Committee. This was a request made by Director Itmeyer that arose from a community meeting at Trona, where it was felt that the people of Trona didn't feel as if their voice was being heard by the board. And so it was suggested, and Chairman Heyman agreed to add that to this add that to this resolution as well. It doesn't take any members away. It just adds an additional member. That concludes the report.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take public comment next. Any public comment from the floor? Any public comment on the phones? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring back to the board. Any questions or discussions from the board members?
I do have one question. On section 4, on page 2, is it really, it reads now that section 5.5 of the bylaws is hereby amended to modify the third sentence of section 5.9 as follows. It seems to me maybe
that should
it ought to be a 5.5.
Correct.
That second 5.9 should be 5.5.
That's correct. We should it should be adopted with that change.
And that's my only input.
Thank you.
you add any of the changes that were presented from Dave Janis? Do these need to be mentioned before we?
I'm sorry, what were those changes?
I think most of the things we talked about were really procedural issues that are going to be handled independent of the bylaws. They didn't really impact the bylaw to begin with, I don't believe.
Okay. We can work those out as we move along and move through it. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
This is Tim Ettmeyer from San Bernardino County. I just wanted to thank everyone for the addition of including the language adding a representative of the Trona community. That was one of the biggest messages that I took away from attending a community meeting a couple weeks back. Was there's a very strong feeling in the community that they don't get heard enough, and they have a lot of ideas that they'd like to have a forum that they can use to present to the board, and I think this will help provide it. Additionally, I appreciate that this is in addition to the existing membership. I know that there's some, that there's issues that come up regarding some of the litigation involving soils and everything, but I would hope that we can find a way to keep them involved in the board. They're one of the largest water users in the basin. They have more experience than almost anyone in the basin when it comes to pumping water and handling it. And I would hope that we can find a way that we can keep them participating actively and with to the extent we're able to, despite some of the litigation, which I think generally tends to be more of an issue for the full Groundwater Authority Board and less the PAC. So. Anyway, I just want to thank everyone for including the Trona public, and hope that the PAC will really help address some of the concerns about not having a voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enner, and I would like to concur with what you just said and agree with you. I think it's very important for Searles and Trona particularly to have a member on the TAC or PAC and to be a participating voice in this process. So, okay, any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, we will look for a motion to approve. Do I need to read this as a?
No, it can just be a motion to approve resolution. You don't have to read it.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the resolution number 06-21.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you.
I so move with that one modification to that one paragraph.
Right.
Noted.
I'll repeat that since my mic wasn't on. I will move to approve the changes with that one minor amendment from 5.9 to 5.5.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Chairman Heyman?
Aye.
Vice Chair Watora?
Aye.
Director Scrivener?
Aye.
Director Ittmeyer?
Aye.
Director Vallejo?
Aye.
Okay, very good. We'll now move on to item number 12, General Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item B is a report from Capital Core Group. You have a memo in your packet, but we have representatives from Capital Core with us, and I'd like for them to go ahead and make that report directly to you today.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Jeff Simonetti with the Capital Core Group, and just wanted to give you a couple of updates and talk more specifics about what Keith had alluded to, I believe, 2 items ago. So one of the major things that we've been monitoring over the last month that has changed since the last board meeting is that we've got a full finalization of the $5.9 billion budget line items related to the to the water and infrastructure items at the state level. And so since we know where those buckets are going, we've started building funding requests at the state level to send to the State Water Resources Control Board and to the Department of Water Resources. And we'll be finalizing those over the next week or so here, and we'll get those started. So just as a quick follow-up there, in the way that the state budget was written, the money that was associated with the American Recovery Plan and some of the CARES Act dollars, rather than getting earmarked within the specific budget bill, they put lump sums into both the State Department of Water Resources as well as the State Water Resources Control Board, and then those departments will create guidelines and application guidelines that we will be able to make applications towards. What Keith was referencing is something that came out of Proposition 68. And I know that this is something that we had applied for grant funding in the past through that program. Next year, there's an infrastructure grant that's associated with Prop 68, and they have created eligibility guidelines. And let me read you the exact eligibility guidelines for that Proposition 68 funding opportunity for next year. It says, the grant solicitation is for projects located within medium and high priority basins, including those that are critically overdrafted, that are not adjudicated, seeking adjudication, or are listed as probationary by the State Water Resources Control Board. Now, we flagged this, as Keith was alluding to, because we know that there's a potential for an adjudication process here within the basin, and we just wanted to let you guys know that we do not know what the full guidance is going to be on the Department of Water Resources and the State Water Resources Control Board in terms of their program guidance for the infrastructure dollars that we'll be going after. But if that's something that you wanted to go after in terms of a Proposition 68 grant in the next year, or if that is something that the Department of Water Resources continues and uses that same grant guidance in the funds that we are planning to apply for, and the adjudication process moves forward, that will negatively impact our ability to apply for those state funding and would make us ineligible for that. So that was one of the main things that we wanted to flag, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on that.
So just to confirm, this is Director Vallejo. The adjudication that the Water District filed has the potential to inhibit our ability to obtain grant funding for projects like, see if I recall correctly, like our recycled water project, those kinds of issues?
It's possible, yes. And again, they make clear it's in writing in the Proposition 68 grant that it says seeking adjudication. And what we're saying is if the Department of Water Resources uses those same eligibility guidelines in the Department of Water Resources grants that are associated with this budget line items, then yes, that would negatively affect, as you were saying, our ability to get funding for things like the wastewater treatment plant.
Any other questions from the board? And do you have any other information to share with us or topics?
No, that covers what we needed to cover. So thank you.
Jeff, this is Steve. You're going to report on our import water progress?
That's something that you wanted me to give details on?
Well, I just thought we were going to report on the fact that the negotiations are proceeding at a good rate. Things look favorable right now.
Yes, so we've moved forward, and I think as we've talked about, yes, we're moving forward on the term sheet, and yes, we'll continue to move those forward.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff.
Okay, so we have a couple of other items here under General Manager's report. You have your monthly financial report in the packet. Basically your work in progress, profit and loss statement, and this is through the end of June, and essentially it's giving you our receipts and our expenditures through the end of June, basically laid out based on the budget that was adopted for the year. We're working to be able to show other elements of the financials, including basically like a balance sheet. For today, I'll just tell you that as far as our invoices, we're pretty much up to date in terms of payment of outstanding invoices. I think we're current. The only thing that's, I believe, it's not shown here, I don't believe, and we're looking at how to track it is, of course, the advance from Kern County and the also the amount that we owe to the city of Ridgecrest, which is an ongoing amount. But otherwise, we're current on our actual invoices received as payables to the authority, and we're looking forward to continuing the development of our financial statements, particularly as we develop the implementation of a new financial program or software. And I think the intent there is to have that maybe implemented within the next 6 months or so. I don't know if we'll have it done by the end of the year, but hopefully shortly after the first of the year, if not end of the year. And SDEC, we got a good report on that. I don't believe we have a report in the packet, and we heard from Joseph that we've extended the term for the work, and we're moving the money over to the audit and the leak detection aspect of it. So we're looking forward to having some additional work on that end of it. Finally, on the past due accounts, I think we're focusing on the larger pumpers who are not in compliance. April's working on that. She's identified a few pumpers to date, and she'll continue to make progress on that. I'm happy to answer questions, but that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions from the board?
Yes, well, a comment more than a question. I've gone through very top level look at the finances and primarily the replenishment fee. I think my numbers regarding the revenue agree with yours based upon the fact that you don't have this July's revenue in there and that you don't account for the credit we took, because my records show that the Water District has paid almost $2.3 million into the fund from beginning of January. However, I can't follow any of the expenditures, and frankly, I'm a little bit concerned about that, as I've stated before, and I'm sure you're aware of. I am, however, encouraged by your continued statements regarding a new accounting system, and I would like to encourage you to get that on board as quickly as possible. There hasn't been a finance report for probably 4 or 5 months now that at least an Iowa Farm Boy can understand. So I would appreciate that being expedited to the extent practical. Thank you.
We are working on it.
Any other board member comments? Any public comments? from the floor, or we do have one from the phone. So any public comments from the floor?
Don Decker again. Am I close enough to this fiendish device? One of the things that myself and others have, that's interesting, have pointed out over and over again is the absolute necessity of having, I think it's intermittent, having a POAM for this program. We, of course, did have a fairly comprehensive document until we run off the end of it. Needs to be restarted, rewritten for the current effort. Otherwise, there's no line item description of anything. Doesn't match. Line item means you have identification. And the financial report that goes along with it is the means to actually track your, not only your progress, but your financial side. It's a standard thing for any large corporation. They may not call it a POAM, but it's always present. And for larger government programs and even smaller programs, it's an essential aid to the program manager and the program and the auditors and everybody else. It's not an option. That's my input to you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll take phone call comments. Caller, go ahead. Caller, go ahead.
Yes, this is Renee Westerlusk. I really don't understand that top revenue line where it says pumping fee. I think there's something not correct because I don't really understand why when you go across, then you have replenishment fee. It makes it look like the pumping fee is paying for part of the replenishment fee. I don't really understand this actual column versus the budget one. Those actuals under replenishment and GSP, are those the revenues that are supposed to be coming in from the fees, those actual, and like the pumping fee is a separate fee from replenishment fee. And then I don't really understand the transient pool mitigation, the actual thing. We're not getting revenue from that, from what I understand. We just have two streams of revenue, the pumping fee and the replenishment fee. If you could please explain.
Carol, would you like to address that question?
Might be a better. I guess it might be better to do this offline rather than try to walk through it all here.
Okay, so we'll take that question and we'll get an answer for it later.
Okay.
If I could inject to maybe help Renee, maybe confuse the thing more. GSP development was really the increased pumping fee from $30 to $105, and it was to pay for the completion of the GSP. The replenishment fee line, in my mind, is the augmentation or the imported water portion of the replenishment fee, and the transient pool mitigation is really the shallow well mitigation.
Okay.
And I think that actually is what was in the original January, or it might have been February, version of the budget.
So shouldn't transient pool mitigation be changed to shallow well mitigation? Because transient pool is that allotted amount of water for all the agricultural interests that are willing to give up their operations to get a portion of it.
So the reason that's tracked that way and it says transient pool is because they do pay Those members who are part of the transient pool, they only pay the shallow well mitigation fee. So we track that individually as revenue from the transient pool members. Yes, other people, as the replenishment fee, they pay a combination of both, and that's why that's tracked in that column. So the transient pool is because we track pumping and finances from those individuals completely separate from any other funding source, if that makes sense.
Okay, I understand that now. The replenishment fee is just the total, those that have to pay both?
Replenishment fee, correct. So the district, Seals Valley Minerals, and Mojave Pistachios, they pay the replenishment fee as a whole of, obviously, the amount for augmented water and the shallow well mitigation impact fee.
Okay.
And I believe on the top where you're referring, does it say the allocation to admin and it separates extraction and replenishment?
No, I'm not seeing that.
Okay.
Just the very first, top of the first page. Where
the revenue pumping fee?
Revenue and then pumping fee.
So that's the groundwater extraction fee.
Yeah. But then when you go across the thing, it's actually replenishment fee. You're not, that column where it says replenishment fee. Mm-hmm. I think it should be on a separate line or something.
Right. Okay.
The replenishment fee should be down on a separate line.
Right.
Not because otherwise you're going across. Pumping fee would go with GSP development, and then you're saying the transient pool, agricultural interests that are in the transient pool, they're paying the pumping fee.
I think that was intended to be all of the pumping fee revenues across the line, that line there.
Okay, and the replenishment fee should be on a separate line because that's not part of the pumping fee.
The pumping or the replenishment and the groundwater extraction fee are revenues paid based on the amount of water you pump. So I believe that's why it's listed that way. You pay the replenishment fee based on how much water you're pulling from the basin. You pay the groundwater extraction fee based on how much water you're pulling from the basin. So therefore, it is a pumping fee in a sense that it's paid based on pumping.
Okay. But I don't know. I think they should rename that top line from pumping fee to something else because otherwise it's confusing because these were two separate fees and plus the extraction or pumping fee is eventually going to go away.
Right, and that's noted. We'll look into changing that, or rewording it so it's more clear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Next caller. Okay, see no further public comment. We will go ahead and close the general manager's report, and we're going to move on to closing comments, and I'd like to at this time start with Commander Benson in the Navy.
Thank you. So I wanted to thank everyone. It's been wonderful working with you for the last 3 years, but it's come a time where I'm moving on from position as Public Works Officer. So Commander Ben Turner, who's in attendance today, is the new Public Works Officer, so he'll be up here. April should have the letter submitted for his designation as the ex officio member from the Navy, and just want to make sure to introduce him here at the meeting and again say thanks.
Thank you, sir. And we will move next to Director Rattore. Any closing comments?
I would first of all like to thank the staff for putting together what I think will amount to a PAC and TAC revitalization. I do think we need to watch it carefully for the first 6 months and perhaps make some changes 6 months from now, but give it a try. I think it's got a good chance of working. And I'd like to thank all the people and the ones that have already left for coming. And if everybody brought 3 or 4 friends next month, that would be really nice. Thank you.
Director Ittmeyer.
Just wanted to thank the staff for all their hard work getting this, getting everything prepared for this meeting, and thank my fellow board members for all the hard work, especially with regards to the PAC and the TAC. It should really help help with outreach and give us some good information moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Scribner.
Thanks.
Thank you. Director Vallejo.
Nothing from Inyo. Thank you.
That leaves me. So I'd like to take a moment and thank Commander Benson for all of his hard work and for the Navy and for this board. And I wish you well on your future endeavors. And would also like to welcome our new Commander Turner and welcome aboard and look forward to working with you. And I also want to say thank you to Director Ittmeyer for going out to Trona to the town hall. I understand it was a very, very good discussion, that you were in the hot seat a lot, and I commend you on your going there and explaining things on behalf of the GA and taking the time to do that. I know I know it wasn't easy. So, and I believe that's all I have for now. So with that, anyone have any other comments? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.